Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 37 of Fracking Nightmare. And the agenda to initiate an unconventional gas industry in the UK is certainly hotting up. And we're going to be welcoming back Jon and Val Mager from East Yorkshire later on in the show. In fact, not too much later on in the show. But first of all, I want to revisit what is becoming a regular feature of the opening moments of the show, and that's taking a look at the journey of the iGas stock. And apparently the graphic designers of iGas have still not corrected their corporate logo, which should, of course, show Scotland adjoined to England following the manipulation of the ballot there. But let's take a look at the stock, because a couple of weeks ago, we had a bottle of champagne on the table celebrating the fact that iGas stock had fallen below £1. Well, this week, actually towards the back end of last week, it actually dipped below 90. So if we can look at the screen here, and we can see the trend over the last year, looking at that massive jump early in 2014, when the iGas stock jumped up to £1.60. Well, now it's down to almost half that. And as we can see over the past 7 days, it took a bit of a tank on Thursday and early Friday, actually falling down below 86, before climbing back up at close of play this evening to 89, so nicely just under the 90 pence marker. So once again, my recommendation to all small investors is get the hell out of unconventional gas, because the stock price is only going to go in one direction, and it ain't going to be doing you a lot of favors. So if you made your money, now is the time to walk away. Obviously, the Rothschilds fund managers are of similar mind. I don't know whether they've been watching Fracking Nightmare. Somehow I doubt it. But they have elected to take their near $1 billion out of the hydrocarbon sector. So you won't be seeing them investing in unconventional hydrocarbons anytime soon. Well, the iGas stock price may, of course, take a further tank once the magnitude of the opposition to their operation at Ellesmere Port is fully realised. It's anticipated that the iGas will start moving infrastructure onto the site at Ellesmere Port anytime soon. So if you are a veteran of the Barton Moss campaign, or even if you're not, and you would like to join in the campaign to prevent the unconventional gas industry gaining a foothold in the UK, then take a trip to the M53 and get off at either junctions 8 or 9, and you won't be able to miss the camp. It's situated just at the entrance of the industrial estate that leads down to the iGas well site. And you'll be given a very warm welcome there. The camp has become very firmly established. It seems that the local authority have backed away from their intimidatory remarks that they were looking to seek eviction. And if they did, then we would simply requote Judge Burse at the High Court hearing where Rathlin Energy sought the eviction of Crawberry Castle back in late July, where the judge stated that he wasn't in any way, shape or form trying to impede or impinge upon the fundamental right to protest. And in fact, he suggested that the protection community simply move from where they were in front of the well site to the verge. Well, that's, of course, exactly what the protectors are doing at Ellesmere Port. They are camped on the verge. So I don't think that the local authority would have too much success in the High Court there, not until the Tory government carries out its threat to repeal the human rights legislation. But fortunately, the judiciary are very much working with the protection community because they are upholding the law. Meanwhile, I took another trip down south at the weekend, and there is a live stream video up on Bambuza. where I was monitoring what was occurring at Horse Hill. Now, you will remember from a program a couple of weeks ago that Horse Hill Developments, chaired by David Lenegas, went to great lengths to state that they're not fracking at Horse Hill. And this is very interesting, isn't it, that the British government has an agenda to initiate an unconventional hydrocarbons industry in this country, an industry which can pretty much only be established through the process of hydraulic fracturing, yet all the license holders claim we're not fracking. Well, not yet. We know what your true intentions are. Well, this is a screenshot from that live stream. So as you can see here, the rig is well and truly established. Conveniently, behind the trees, the actual road there, Horse Hill is the name of the road. That's the other side of the trees. That runs up from the A217, just north of Gatwick Airport, just north of the village of Charwood. And shockingly, there is absolutely zero protection community presence here at all on any kind of permanent basis. And in fact, while I was visiting the well site at the weekend, I met a couple of local people who had come up to the well site to find out what it was that had been keeping them awake at night over the previous few nights. Well, we stopped and had a chat, and as I explained what was occurring, the lady said, well, there's nothing we can do about it anyway, is there? And she stormed off. Meanwhile, her husband actually was interested in learning a little bit more, and we had a discussion for about 10 minutes. And I did advise him that there would indeed be a community meeting in Hawley in the not-too-distant future, and that he should look out for information. And I was advised just this evening that there had been a very successful day today with a number of people stopping traffic on the 217 and handing out flyers. In fact, one person commented and said, it is amazing how many people driving Bentleys and Rolls Royces actually stopped and wanted to know more about what was going on at Horse Hill. And so they should, of course, because if you're driving a Bentley and a Rolls Royce, then call it a hunch. I would suggest you're living in a property that's worth a bob or three. And the reality is, of course, that if this industry gets a foothold anywhere near your residence, then the likelihood is that your property price will absolutely tank. Of course, that could be a good thing because it will save you from Ed Miliband's mansion tax. So maybe that's a selling point for moving close to a frack site, but it's about the only one that I can think of, to be honest. So this is what the main entrance at Horse Hill still looks like. No police whatsoever. And actually, it seems that Horse Hill Developments have considered the possibility of a few protectors actually standing in front of the gates. So they've brought along some Harris fencing so that they can run the Harris fencing literally along the white line of the road should a protection community become established. Meanwhile, despite Horse Hill's exclamation that they're not fracking, there is still some contradiction between what Horse Hill Developments are pumping out and what Magellan are telling their investors. They're obviously trying to present the picture to the local communities that they're only targeting conventional hydrocarbons and no risk of fracking. Yet the reality is they will be drilling down to 8,680 feet. And even though they have stated that they will not be running well logs in the unconventional geology on this occasion, Magellan will still be taking core samples. So consequently, this is still an unconventional exploratory well by the back door, however you decide to dress it up. So anyway, obviously a campaign is going to be mounted to bring the people of South Surrey and North Sussex up to speed. So do go to visit the website or just search for Frack Free Surrey, and you'll find the events that are planned there. I believe there's a picnic scheduled for next Sunday, and then a public meeting in Hawley on the following Monday. So do check that out. So now all eyes are going to be upon East Yorkshire, this coming week, because on Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m, the East Riding of Yorkshire Council will be meeting, or the Planning Committee will be meeting, to consider Rathlin Energy's application for a 2-year extension for them to continue the work that they haven't managed to achieve in the time of the original planning application, planning permission, and now they want to be there for another 2 years. And Jon and Val Mager, who were with us last week, are back with me this week to give us an update on the unfolding saga in East Riding. So, Jon and Val, are you still online?
Just come back.
Just come back. I did say you had time to get a cup of tea, so hopefully that was about right.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't see you. There we go.
We can see
Excellent. You can see me. Okay. Hey, well, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for your contribution last week and bringing us up to speed. Now, I gather that you've actually just come back from being at Crawberry Hill this evening, and that it was quite eventful.
It got a bit rough. I think the background is that there was an important trial in Beverley last Friday, where 3 protectors who were charged with obstruct the highway and obstruct the police at West Newton were found not guilty by Beverley magistrates. And this was a very important case because our excellent lawyer, Helen White from Lizars, was able to demonstrate that the police had a zero tolerance approach to protest, and that it was quite wrong for them not to allow walking in, or sorry, in this case, walking out of the workers from the West Newton site. Anyway, we've established that there is a right to walk on the highway and so on. Since then, the police seem to have been very provocative and touchy up at Crawberry, and tonight we had about 20 locals, local residents, a very pleasant evening until the shift change. I supported a friend. He's 80 years old, he's got arthritis, but he was standing by the gate. We were told that we were guilty of a Section 3 offence, but in fact we were standing on private land. And it got pretty ugly because the police thought it was okay just to pick us up and shove us around without any warning. I'll be in touch with our lawyer in the morning, and so will my friend Michael. It was all filmed and so on. But there's a bit of provocation going on prior to this important planning meeting on Thursday.
So basically, Humberside Police are continuing with their intimidatory tactics, because to date of the cases that have been heard at Beverley Magistrates Court, of the people that have been arrested at either West Newton or at Crawberry Hill, not a single charge has resulted in a conviction. Is that correct?
There's been one 2-year suspended sentence.
But that was based on carrying a knife, wasn't it?
That was simply someone with a penknife that they'd had since their 16th birthday, and it was ½ an inch over the permitted length. But the judge, wisely, in our view, refused to hand down the mandatory sentence and instead gave a suspended sentence and no costs, no fine.
So, despite this, the Humberside Police are refusing to acknowledge the decision of the judiciary and are effectively operating as corporate enforcers. They're carrying out these unlawful arrests, which they know very well will not result in any conviction, but they are doing it purely to effectively enforce what they claim to be Rathlin's right to lawfully enter and exit the site, but whilst refusing to acknowledge that the human rights legislation actually and specifically states that peaceful protest may actually result in disruption and nuisance, legitimate disruption and nuisance.
It's worse than that, Ian, because at the end of the day, the inspector who's responsible for leading this operation asked our lawyer where she'd found out about all this law that she had put at great length to the magistrates, and she pointed out that it was her job to know the law, and she had formed the impression that the police also knew the law. One of the unfortunate policemen who gave evidence said he'd had many, many briefings, but he couldn't remember them.
John, have we lost you there? But this is a problem that we have with Kingston Communications, and we did experience it a few times last week. So we will be trying to get John and Val back online. But while we're doing that, perhaps we'll take this short break.
"60% of the English countryside is under threat from fracking, a process which has transformed the landscape in many parts of the United States and Australia, and contaminated the drinking water and air with highly toxic chemicals and gases.
1 in 3 hydraulic fracturing was using a carcinogen. So it really is a chemical cocktail that goes into the earth, of which up to 40% remains there.
The grandchildren were in the bath and they started screaming, and everything that was in the water was burnt.
The MDs have been instructed not to report any negative health effects that they believe to be associated with living over a gas field.
There's nothing inherent about the shale gas process that is going to lead to problems.
Some of this material was actually taken to a large sewage treatment works, which had no capacity to handle radioactive materials of this kind.
800,000 gallons was dumped into the Manchester Ship Canal.
50 seismic events were recorded during just 6 fracking treatments.
What is the minimum depth that the fracking will fracture?
We can't tell you until we drill the exploration.
Have you no idea whatsoever? Because it doesn't look like you've done your research.
Shale gas is part of the future, and we will make it happen.
We are just numbers, and we are sat on this rich vein of gas, and they will do and say anything to get that gas out of the ground.
Well, we're back with part 2, and unfortunately, we still not managed to get the connection back on with John and Val in Beverley. We're constantly trying that, and as soon as they're back online, then we'll bring them back into the conversation. So, they're back on, John and Val?
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, you did warn us about Kingston Communications last week, so there is clearly nothing suspicious about the fact that this connection keeps disappearing while we're having this conversation.
I think you should get them to sponsor the show, actually. I think an advertisement from Kingston every time we go off would be good.
Yeah, really, really. Now, Kingston Communications calls are limited to the Hull and the immediate surrounds. But somebody just suggested on the chat box that they thought you still only had black and white TV up there. Is that right?
On Mondays and Tuesdays, yeah, the rest of the week we just make our own entertainment.
Well, you know, it's a wonderful life at the moment. It's a wonderful lifestyle up in East Riding of Yorkshire, and obviously long may that continue. So I think you also had another event actually at the Crawberry Hill site yesterday. I think you had a family day there, didn't you? And how well attended was that?
That was brilliant. The weather couldn't have been better. We've made a safe area fenced off from the road. The protectors have done a fantastic job, and there was a large group of families with their children. It's face painting. It's a new departure. The children do the face painting on the adults, and there were some very happy and scary results of the protectors being painted up.
It would seem there's been some censorship on the photographs coming through, because I haven't seen any of them, but no doubt I'll catch up with them when I'm back in East Yorkshire later on in the week.
So the other piece of news, and this relates to what you said about the fact that the government thinks everybody is fracking, but none of the industry do. It's very interesting that there was a secret briefing for East Riding councillors last week about fracking. I think this was at the Brough Business Centre last Wednesday. And I'm puzzled because the council always say there's no problem with any of this because there's no fracking taking place. Of course, Rathlin always say that. So it is a bit of a mystery as council taxpayers. We wonder why the council's spending money on learning about fracking.
But there's also something that disturbs me about that meeting, John, because it was alluded to that Friends of the Earth had actually attended that meeting, or somebody from Friends of the Earth had been present at that meeting. Yet when they were asked a direct question, they decided to somewhat obfuscate and couldn't recall what was discussed. Isn't that about right?
We found out that it was the Friends of the Earth planning advisor that briefed the meeting. And as you would expect, we've sent some fairly...
Just as we get to the juicy bit there, the local group are not particularly impressed that Friends of the Earth were invited to brief the council at that secret meeting, and yet were somewhat reluctant to share what transpired at that meeting. So just while we see if we can get Jon and Val back online, let's revisit just where we're talking about here in the country. So what we can see on the screen here is this grey area here. This is the Petroleum Exploration and Development Licence held by Rathlin Energy. It is the largest single licence in the country. It's the only licence held by Rathlin on the UK mainland. Their other licence is in Northern Ireland. At the moment, they have 2 sites in this licence, one over towards the east, just a few miles in from the coast, at a place called West Newton, and the other one right on the corner here of their licensed area at Crawberry Hill, a beautiful, beautiful location just outside of Beverley. Now, last week, we did make the observation that David Montague-Smith had been getting a little bit of due attention, particularly because of his apparent conflict of interests in his joint role as Chief Executive Officer of Rathlin Energy and also as Chairman of West Northamptonshire's branch of the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, otherwise known as CPRE. Now, an article was run in the Guardian. I am not sure that it appeared in the print version of the press, but it's of Guardian, but it did actually appear online. And in this article, John Vidal, the author, was actually acknowledging that there was in a bit of a issue here, and he was actually holding back pending getting a quote from David Montague-Smith about his duplicity in holding these roles and using his position as chairman of the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England to lobby MPs and central government to get them to reduce or ultimately remove all subsidies associated with renewables. And as I showed last week, the Campaign to Protect Rural England had been through a bit of a rebranding and is now euphemistically known in East Yorkshire as the Campaign for the Protection of Rathlin Energy. David Montague-Smith and Rathlin's PR company respond by accusing us of defamation. Well, how can it be defamation when we are simply reporting what is actually in the public domain? Of course, the misfortune for David Montague-Smith and Rathlin Energy is that there are a number of us who are joining the dots. And we simply join the dots to enable people to see the bigger picture. And obviously that's a picture that David Montague-Smith would rather that we didn't see. Now, Jon and Val are back online. So, Jon and Val, can we see you, or are we just audio now?
See you. And Val, during the commercial break, Val went and got the email, so I can give you the update on the councillor briefing. Naomi, their FOE planning officer, says, I did not give a presentation. It was fairly informal. Questions were asked and we rotated between 3 rooms with a number of councillors in each room, so he just had flip charts. It was organised by Andy, who's the planning manager, and the Environment Agency, DEC, and an oil and gas consultancy were also in attendance. I did not see what the other speakers said as we were in separate rooms. The others had presentations, so you could ask East Riding Council to see them. I will. I was speaking when I could get a word in edgeways about planning and shale gas briefing, which is on our website. So not a lot to learn, but Naomi has explained that she's very busy and we'll get back tomorrow with further detail.
Oh, well, my apologies then. Obviously, Friends of the Earth have been a little bit more transparent than perhaps we were originally perceiving.
But it's the oldest trick in the book to have 3 separate rooms so you don't get to hear what other people are saying about you.
Well, it'll be interesting to know what the agenda was, because, you know, notice that the industry absolutely will do whatever it possibly can to avoid any public debate. I mean, that's why, you know, they unless, of course, they happen to know that the person who is presenting the counter view is effectively a safe pair of hands. I mean, that's why there are individuals, and I'll make particular reference, the likes of Tony Bosworth of Friends of the Earth and Mike Hill, who are becoming sort of industry favourites at their events, because these individuals concentrate on the need for robust regulatory control. But as you know, has been proven pretty much everywhere else in the world, there's no such thing.
And Ian, I've spent the last 3 days, I have gone through 295 letters of objection, and I can tell you that the great majority of objectors in the East Riding are appalled at the idea that there is no independent regulation of Rathlin Energy, that they are in effect self-reporting on their day-to-day management, when they told the council that they were closely monitored day by day, hour by hour, by a strict regulatory regime. The fact is that from the start of operations at Crawberry Hill until August the 27th, there were no visits at all by the Health and Safety Executive or by the Environment Agency to that site. That is deeply shocking to the people that now realise what's really going on as far as regulation is concerned.
Well, and coupled with which, John, I mean, I think as we touched on last week, both the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive are having their budgets cut dramatically and drastically. So the reality is that as it stands now, neither of these regulatory bodies have either the resource nor the expertise to be able to monitor what is an embryonic industry, and hopefully it never gets beyond that. So how on earth are they going to be able to fulfill any kind of regulatory or monitoring function when, if this industry, God forbid, gets a foothold, when you know their resources are being cut?
That's right. I mean, I don't know whether it's helpful. Oh. Can you see me? Can you see us?
Not yet. I can now.
Okay. I've got a brief one here to read out from. Can you get? I'll carry on talking.
Yeah, carry on talking. Yeah.
This is from a family living at Withenwick, which overlooks the West Newton site, objecting very strongly. The impact of this site on the Walkington neighbourhood will be immense, bringing convoys of lorries, machinery, police vehicles through the villages, and the roads around the site are just not suitable. The noise from the site will also affect the local community as they work constantly through the night, and the lights that are associated with this are immense. The lack of independent inspection by regulators is very much a concern, as we feel they should be monitored and regulated other than by Rathlin themselves. And this is the heartfelt bit. The stress which this application could bring to families and communities is beyond measurable, and so therefore this application should be considered very carefully. And you get a real flavour of just how bad it's been out at West Newton.
Well, of course, I mean, at West Newton, I mean, the video that I recorded on July the 2nd, which is available on YouTube, if anybody wants to watch that, you simply search for Fracking Nightmare West Newton. And this is the convoy that arrived on July the 2nd. And this was the first convoy of 2 on that day. And local residents were absolutely shocked, both at the volume of heavy goods vehicles and also, of course, of police presence. Some 40-plus vehicles and some 200 police in the escort. And when one of the local residents in particular came down to the well site later in the day, she absolutely burst into tears as the reality of what was literally in her backyard hit home.
That's right. And I think part of the anger and disgust is the contrast between what Rathlin said. I may have pointed this out last week, but Rathlin said they didn't need to do any consultation about this current application because they had thoroughly consulted last time. And Ian, I know you're always interested in trying to get balance. What I'd like to do is read out, it's very short, it's that out of 330 letters received by the council, they had 1 letter of support, and this is what it says. This is to confirm we are in favour of the extension and regret the disruption caused by persons who were not aware of the facts presented by Rathlin at their inaugural meeting to describe the geology of the site and their objectives. Now, what they're talking about is a meeting back in 2011 where a very rosy picture was given. What's fascinating is that the farmer who lives near to Crawberry Hill, and this was the farmer who initially agreed to have the drill site on his land, but backed out at the last minute, he opposes now the extension. And this is interesting because this is what was promised. We were promised the site would be the most environmentally friendly ever and would have no impact upon ourselves or the community. The reverse is actually the truth. The site has become increasingly industrialised and is a blot on the landscape. We farm the neighbouring farmland and have become increasingly disrupted by the presence of the drilling site and especially the associated protesters. And of course, what I will be saying to the planning committee on Thursday is that all the local residents would like to see the protesters leave. We'd like to see them leave once that drilling site has been closed down. But in the meantime, the protesters must definitely stay there.
Well, and can I ask, was that letter of support, so that's 330 against and 1 in support, and is that a letter of support from an individual or from a local council?
No, it's from a family that live in Walkington.
Okay, so it's a single family. Yeah. Because, I mean, I can't remember, were you at the Bishop Burton meeting? I don't think you were there that night, were you?
I was going to come on to that, but go ahead.
I was going to tell you, but because when I gave the presentation at Bishop Burton at the request of the residents there, and of course that event manifested out of the presentation that I gave at Walkington a week or so earlier. But that meeting at Bishop Burton effectively became a village debate, and I pretty much stood back because it was very evident that this was a discussion that village needed to have. And the accusation levelled against the representatives of the family, the Elleringtons, who have leased their land to Rathlin, and of course one or at least one of the Ellerington family has a fairly close association with the local parish council, and there was a lot of anger being vented at that meeting by the people of Bishop Burton, who were appalled at the lack of consultation.
Well, that's right. And one of the things that you would find fascinating if you were to read the letters that have come in from Bishop Burton is that one point is that knowing the streets there, it would appear that almost all of Mr. Ellerington's immediate neighbours have taken the opportunity to express strong opposition to their neighbours' activity. But secondly, well over a third of the objectors have specifically mentioned their disgust that the parish council gave support to the extension, the continued drilling at the site, without any consultation or any notice to residents that this matter was going to be discussed. And they've also pointed, as you have, to the fact that one of the landowners, a close member of the Ellesmere family, is the vice chair of the Bishop Burton Parish Council. So a very strong reaction indeed, and great appreciation to you and the people that organised that meeting, people mentioning the fact that until that meeting they had no idea what was going on.
So let me just understand this. So we have literally a family member of the Elleringtons as vice chair of the parish council, who, without consultation of the local community, submit a response to East Riding stating that they have no objection to Rathlin's application to extend on the site for 2 years. Now, this is a pecuniary interest, and I mean, this is corruption. And the reality is that if any member of the council is proven to have had any pecuniary interest in the outcome of that decision, then the recommendation from that local authority surely is void.
Well, that's right. And you'll understand that we've already sent in a series of freedom of information requests, but also among those who are most concerned about the situation are members of the parish council who were on holiday and whose complaint is that the meeting was called at short notice during the main holiday period. Now, the interesting thing is that East Riding Council, which is the main local authority, the parish council is a subsidiary to that, they are responsible for the disciplinary code of the parish councils. And once we have got all the details of exactly what happened at that meeting, the main point, going back to our discussion last week about active democracy, is that the other parish councils that have written in have, in some cases, had village meetings before the parish council formally took the decision. They've certainly encouraged active participation. They've had one village, Newbold, had a survey of all residents that was reported to the parish council. The other parish councils are doing what they should do, which is going out of their way to actively involve and invite opinion and so on from residents before voting on these matters. And it's striking, very striking, that Bishop Burton is the only parish council that supports continued drilling on the site.
So this is obviously a massive day for East Yorkshire. It's also a massive day for the industry. I mean, considering that recently, obviously, Quadrilla have been knocked back with the forthcoming judicial review following their application to return to Balcombe. Celtique have been knocked back at Whisper Green and Fernhurst. And I believe that Quadrilla also, actually, I did hear a rumour that Lancashire County Council were also meeting this coming Thursday to discuss Quadrilla's planning application to start drilling at Rossiter and Preston New Road. But that, at this moment, is unconfirmed. I mean, it would be remarkable, of course, what a coincidence if there are two planning application meetings at the same time, or certainly on the same day. But obviously, if Rathlin are prevented from continuing their presence at Crawberry Hill, it's going to be a significant blow to them and to the industry. But, I mean, there is some suggestion that Rathlin have already been given the heads up that the planning application in East Yorkshire is simply going to be rubber stamped.
Well, a number of locals have already written in to complain. The report had to be signed off within the council on Tuesday afternoon. The report had to be on the website Wednesday afternoon. But what a coincidence that there was a small convoy going up to the camp on Tuesday with more porter cabins and diesel storage tanks, bringing the site up to the full spec for full-on operation. And more interesting than all, that the head of security for Beacon Security relocated himself from West Newton to Crawbury on the Tuesday. And although the planning officer who wrote the report insisted that she had not shared the report and was not required to share a draft report with him.
Oh gosh, we've lost Jon again. Just at a crucial moment there. We'll try and bring him back. Now, whilst Jon is trying to get back online, let me take a look at something else that's very, very significant, particularly in East Yorkshire. What we have on screen here is the map of the UK aquifers, significant aquifers. I mean, we can see the prominence of the water table down the eastern side of the country. But in the dark blue, we have areas of absolute essential aquifers that are regarded as protection zones. And what we have in East Yorkshire is two significant aquifers. One over on the coastal plain here, the Holderness Plain, and the other one, the Oolite aquifer that runs all the way down through to the Midlands. And I want to draw your attention to a report that has been published in the last few days by the Freshwater Accountability Project, who looked at the implications of this industry on the supply of fresh water in the US. Now, this is online, so you can certainly find this through a very simple search. But I just want to read the first paragraph. This is the shale drilling destroys regional water resources, and projections show entire watershed to be damaged by fracking. So this is Grand Rapids, Ohio, and the first paragraph. Ohioans are beginning to realize that unconventional shale drilling uses a great deal of water, permanently ruining it for other uses. What they may not know is fracked gas and oil wells in Ohio are turning out to be less productive over time, with more water needed, so that the effects of water usage are rising. Now, each time a Utica well is fracked in Ohio, over 7 million gallons of water is needed on average per well. The volume of water needed is steadily increasing as the long-drilled laterals increase in length. As more and more water becomes necessary per unit of gas or oil produced, the cumulative effects are being seen. And here's the real crunch. Very little water is recycled by the industry for reuse. Most fracked water is lost to the watershed and beyond forever, as it is turned into concentrated toxic and radioactive waste. Now, this is a point that I have been flagging up throughout my presentations over the last 21 months around the country. And the industry trots out palliatives, such as the amount of water that it takes to frack the average well is no more than it takes to water a golf course for a month. Well, this is somewhat disingenuous, because when you water a golf course, the water does one of three things. It either irrigates, it evaporates, or it percolates. But in no case is it lost to the system. Yet once the chemicals are added to the water to convert it into an aggressive, toxic frack fluid, that water is lost to the system. And as we've discussed many times, in many cases, as much as half of what is pumped into the geology is lost and is never recovered, to disappear goodness knows where. It's on a mission, it's on a journey. And that which is recovered is becoming increasingly difficult to dispose of. In fact, in this country, there is still no definitive solution for dealing with the toxic waste. But something is coming over the horizon that should give everybody cause for concern. Because just a few miles north of Beverley is the Vale of Pickering. And here we have this is the southern edge of the North York Moors. And there is already one producing well in the area that was drilled at Kirby Misperton. And this is producing oil and gas. And in fact, there's a separation plant on the surface. And the hydrocarbons are being separated on site and then pumped to a nearby processing plant. Well, to the east of that is Ellesmere Port. And now Third Energy, which is primarily owned by Barclays Bank, are seeking planning permission to drill another well. But beyond that, this beautiful village of Ellesmere is also going to be a target, not just for this. This is the rig that was at Kirby Misperton, drilling the initial wells a year or so ago. But there is an application in by Third Energy to dispose of the used fluids and by pumping them back into the geology. So this is a re-injection well. Now, this is the first application for a re-injection well in the UK. And the reason that we should be very concerned about this is because just over a couple of months ago, this document was published by the Department of Energy and Climate Change. And this document is available online, and I would encourage you to Google and download this PDF document, Implementing Geological Disposal. And it is my opinion that there is a very strong possibility, nay, even probability, that the re-injection well at Ellesmere is a pathfinder for the next stage of this agenda, which is to utilize the deep wells that are drilled to access the unconventional hydrocarbons for toxic waste disposal. Now, this is the unconventional hydrocarbons industry effectively looking at means by which it can maximize the return on its initial investment. So once the unconventional hydrocarbons have been milked, once they've been exhausted at the deepest levels, then to simply use the borehole to dispose of toxic waste. Now, this is a process that isn't novel. It's been utilized elsewhere, and primarily in the US, in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma is becoming a nightmare scenario because the unconventional hydrocarbons industry has injected well over 1 billion barrels of toxic waste into disused wells. Now, consequently, what has occurred here is that this toxic waste, this aggressive toxic waste being literally pushed down into disused wells, is still aggressive, it's still active. It's still doing what it was designed to do, which is to create artificial porosity and permeability in conventional geology. And this has resulted in Oklahoma becoming the #1 earthquake state in the US. If you look at the table here, and this is produced by the United States Geological Society, and you can see here that basically up until 2009, then the seismic activity was minimalistic. And now if we look at the number of earthquakes with a magnitude of 3.0 on the Richter or greater has increased dramatically. And what we see is that up until May of this year, there had been some 140 seismic events in Oklahoma, which are attributed to the disposal of toxic waste down disused wells. So imagine if this came to the UK. Jon and Val, are you back online with us? No, we have unfortunately lost you. Well, consequently, there is a need, obviously, to raise awareness of Third Energy's agenda and of the potential for Ellesmere to become the pathfinder for re-injection. So consequently, the local community, the Rydale community, have asked me if I would do a number of events in the area And so this is the flyer that they have developed. And this is available to download from Frack Free Rydale or Frack Free North Yorkshire. And between Wednesday 8th of October and Wednesday 22nd of October, I should be doing 10 events, including one at York on Saturday the 11th of October, which is also the day of Global Frackdown, where there will be events all over the world raising awareness of this pernicious industry. So these are also available, this list of events will also be available on my Facebook pages, on the Fracking Nightmare Facebook page and the Facebook page of Ian R. Crane. So hope to see you if you live in the northeast of the country at one of these events, and hopefully we'll be able to stimulate people's curiosity so that they'll look at this for themselves, come to their own determination as to whether this is something that they're prepared to embrace in their community. Well, the industry is becoming desperate. And of course, it's already an industry that has had to throw phenomenal bribes at local communities. So to date, we have the offer of £100,000 to be provided to each community that embraces the unconventional gas industry. If there is a well site established, then the local community or local authority will get 100% of the business rates. And what was also thrown in was the potential for £800,000 to be granted to any community that embraces the unconventional gas industry. Although hidden behind that was actually the fact that that £800,000 is made up of 40 wells. So it's £20,000 on offer per well within the local community. So basically the British government is suggesting that any local community that does embrace this will potentially have 40 wells within their boundaries. Now, interestingly, when Matthew Hancock, the new energy minister, was asked to name any community in the UK that was prepared to embrace this industry, he couldn't come up with a single community. And I think that's pretty much the way it's going to stay. Now, John and Val, are you back with me?
Yes.
Excellent. Hey, the wonders of Kingston communication. Well, listen, I know that this is something that caught your attention at the weekend. I've just been talking about the incentives that the British government is throwing at communities in a desperate bid to get them to embrace this industry. But over the weekend, we had Jim Ratcliffe of INEOS announcing even more bribery to be thrown at local communities. And here we have this is from the Guardian's page. I think this was today. British firm INEOS accused of bribes and bulldozers approach to fracking. So the company is now offering 6% of future shale gas revenues to those sitting on reserves or affected by their extraction. Now, you actually pointed this out to me. Tom Crotty, who's the director at INEOS, he said, "We are damned if we do and damned if we don't. We are either greedy capitalists or we offer bribes. More seriously, we are trying to replicate how things have been done in the US." Like that is supposed to inspire us, huh?
Well, of course, he's got it wrong. We are greedy capitalists and we offer bribes, is what he meant to say. And I think the most chilling thing about that quote is we're just trying to do it the US way. And my comment on that would be, bribe greedy people and let everybody else take the risk in terms of long-term health, property damage, and so on. When we met with Graham Stewart MP recently, he invited Val and I to a meeting, and he said the whole of British history in the Industrial Revolution is built on risk. You have to take risk in order to see progress. Well, yes, capitalists do take risks, but unfortunately, my reading of history is it's the workers and the consumers that are left to pick up the pieces after capitalism has moved on. And of course, the oil industry is famous because the technology of the oil industry is mobile. The drills can be moved on. The expertise, the people that make the money, can pack their suitcase and be gone in 24 hours. But the most interesting criticism of this planning application, one of the first letters I read, where it says very nicely in this report that once they've finished, Rathlin will restore the green field to its previous condition. And this woman wrote and said, no, they won't, because they're going to leave a well with a cap on top, and that well will be there forever, and sooner or later it will fail, and it will offer a pathway for pesticides and pollution to go down into the aquifer, and for gas and toxins to migrate upwards into the aquifer. Once they have drilled, the well, the pathway is there forever. And it's just that sort of doublespeak that really gets you. There's one other bit of doublespeak. Believe it or not, this report, which is going to the committee on Tuesday, it has to say what corporate priorities it's serving. And believe it or not, the corporate priority that Rathlin's application serves is, quote, valuing our environment. What could be more duplicitous and misleading than that? It's ridiculous.
Well, of course. I mean, David Montague-Smith has already demonstrated his duplicity with his dual role as CEO of Rathlin and chairman of West Northamptonshire campaign for the protection of rural England. I mean, what could be more duplicitous than that? And not only that, but using his position to lobby government to remove the subsidies for renewables, whilst, of course, encouraging the government to throw bribes, ever-increasing bribes, at local communities to embrace the abomination of hydraulic fracturing.
I don't think any of the respondents, any of the people that have written in, have even touched on. No one is suggesting that there's an offset from this bribery. What people are saying is they know now that it will be the people that pay their council tax and pay their water rates that will inevitably pick up the costs. As we know, the Tories voted down a Labour amendment that would have amended the water legislation to make companies responsible. There is no way that the sort of figures that are being mentioned, I think it's 2.6 billion for this Scottish licence that you've referred to. That sort of money would not clean up the pollution that would result in Scotland.
Well, the other factor is, John, that, I mean, we're just coming to the end of what is apparently one of the driest Septembers on record. And actually, the Meteorological Office are forecasting that it's going to be a dry autumn. And so, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that, we are once again back into a water shortage situation, whilst the government is promoting an industry that is going to make enormous demands on UK water resources. But, John, we're running out of time. So the big day, of course, is this coming Thursday. So I'm guessing that you are inviting everybody who has the means to get there to be at Beverley Council offices on Thursday at 2:00. Well, you would if you were still online. So the meeting of the East Riding Planning Committee to consider Rathlin Energy's application for a 2-year extension to remain at Crawberry Hill will take place at the council offices in the centre of Beverley at 2:00. We've got a bit of feedback going on here somewhere. At 2:00 on Thursday afternoon. Now, apparently there are only 40 seats available in the public gallery, and so it'll be done on a first-come, first-served basis. But the fact is that however many people that turn up, there will be, I'm sure, massive demonstration of support for the protection community and for those members of East Riding, residents of East Riding, who oppose this agenda. So be there, Beverley, council offices, 2:00, Thursday. Now, for those people who do live in Scotland, having had the opportunity of independence pulled out from under your feet, you should be very, very concerned by Jim Ratcliffe's announcement that he's planning to throw £2.5 billion at the people who have the misfortune to live under the licences which INEOS has an interest in across the central belt of Scotland. INEOS have bought in to the licences that were originally awarded to Dart Energy. Dart Energy is trying to become part of iGas. The merger is currently under review by the Competitions and Mergers Authority. They will make their decision on October 28th. £2.5 billion to encourage you to live in a toxic environment. Now, word on the grapevine is that the unconventional gas industry is looking to produce a counter program to fracking nightmare. They are apparently concerned about the impact that fracking nightmare is having in terms of raising awareness of this abomination in the UK. And we got a quick insight of the backdrop that they are planning to use for their program. So here you are. This is Frack Heaven. So this is apparently the industry counter to fracking nightmare. Now, all those people who participate in this industry, all those people who subscribe to this industry, trying to make a quick buck, how are you going to sleep at night when the UK looks like this? This is the landscape that this industry leaves behind it wherever it is granted permission to get its bits in the ground. In the UK, we have a tremendous opportunity. That opportunity may not exist for very long. It's important, incredibly important, that the people of this country understand what this industry has done wherever they have managed to get their bits in the ground. Personally, I can sleep at night because regardless of who I'm upsetting, regardless of the bombardment of texts and emails and tweets that I get from those who want to support this novel industry in the UK, open your eyes, take a look, forget the received information that the industry is pumping out to you and take a look for yourself at the magnitude of the damage that this industry leaves behind it. And in particular, look at the impact on the health of the people who have the misfortune to live above the gaslands of the US, of Canada, and of Australia. This could be your fracking nightmare. It's time to get involved. Thank you for joining us. Hope to see you at Beverley on Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Otherwise, see you next Monday evening, 9 o'clock. Bye now.